She was a star who abandoned millions. He was a billionaire who only had 72 hours to live. When 33 doctors said brain death, she heard a cry for help. This is the story of how a nurse's aide used a song to prove that science was about to commit murder. To understand how a song became the only evidence, you need to watch this story until the end. So before time runs out for Marcus, leave your like now, so that this truth reaches those who need it most. Let's get started. Anna Thompson had a voice that could silence an entire room with a single note. It wasn't just technique, though years of classical training had shaped every vibrato, every controlled breath. It was something deeper, something New York Times critics called a frequency that resonates directly with the human heart. At 28, she was at the peak of a meteoric career, recording contracts with major labels, sold-out international tours, her name in bright lights from Carnegie Hall to the Sydney Opera House. The bags always packed, the five-star hotels, the crowd singing her lyrics back to her under blinding spotlights. It was the life she'd dreamed of since she was 7, when she first sang in the church choir in her small Tennessee hometown. But dreams have a peculiar way of reshaping themselves when you least expect it. When Clarice was born, Anna thought she could balance it all. Motherhood and stages, the crib and the footlights. For the first few months, it worked, more or less. Clarice traveled with her, cradled in the arms of hired nannies, sleeping in luxurious dressing rooms while Anna poured her soul out before thousands of strangers. But then came that morning in Boston, 3 weeks after Clarice's 2nd birthday. Anna was preparing for a rehearsal when the nanny ran into the hotel room, her face pale as paper. Clarice was having seizures, small spasms shaking her delicate little body, her eyes rolling back, those pink lips turning blue. The diagnosis came like a shot, a rare and progressive neurological condition that doctors could barely pronounce, much less treat with certainty. Clarice would need constant monitoring, experimental treatments, a team of specialists working together, and above all she needed her mother, not a fragmented, exhausted version disappearing for weeks, but the whole mother, present, anchored. Anna didn't think twice. She cancelled the world tour, broke contracts worth millions, packed up the nomadic life she'd built and returned to the United States, settling in a city she barely knew simply because it had one of the best pediatric hospitals in the country, St. Catherine's Medical Center. Money from past tours helped, but it wasn't infinite. Clarice's treatments were experimental, many not covered by insurance. Anna watched her savings melt like snow under the March sun. She needed work, something stable, something that would keep her close to Clarice. That's how she found herself, at 30, wearing light blue scrubs and a badge that read, Anna Thompson, Nursing Assistant, in small, impersonal letters. From illuminated stages to fluorescent corridors, from gala gowns to medical uniforms, from standing ovations to condescending glances from nurses who saw her as just another inexperienced newbie. No one at St. Catherine's knew who she had been, and Anna preferred it that way. When an older nurse, Sharon, asked where she came from, Anna simply said, career change, needed something more stable. Sharon nodded, as if understanding, but Anna could see the judgment in her eyes. Another person who couldn't handle a real profession and ended up in nursing. Anna didn't care. Let them think what they want. Her ego had been buried long ago, buried under the weight of far more urgent priorities. The first months were brutal. Anna had muscle memory for vocal scales and stage choreography, but nothing prepared her for the relentless physical work of caring for patients, turning heavy bodies, cleaning bodily fluids, memorizing endless medical protocols, enduring the screams of confused patients and the demands of arrogant doctors who treated her like furniture. Her hands, which once held microphones delicately, were now rough and cracked from constantly washing them. Her back ached from bending over hospital beds, but every night, when her shift ended, she'd go up 3 floors to the pediatric ward, where Clarice was admitted for another round of tests. And there, sitting beside her little girl's hospital bed, holding that small hand, Anna would sing. Softly, so as not to disturb other patients, but with all the soul she used to pour into packed arenas. You'll be in my heart. The song she'd hummed to Clarice since birth, the whispered promise that no matter what happened, they'd face it together. Clarice would smile, her big brown eyes shining even through the exhaustion of treatments. "Again, Mommy," she'd whisper, and Anna would sing again, and again. As many times as Clarice needed. This was Anna's new stage, not Carnegie Hall, but a dimly lit hospital room that smelled of disinfectant and desperate hope. The audience wasn't thousands, but one, and that audience of one was all that mattered. Anna had traded fame for presence, glory for love. And though there were nights when she felt the ghost of who she'd been haunting her dreams, the roar of crowds, the adrenaline of spotlights, the pure intoxicating validation of being seen, celebrated, loved by millions, she had no regrets. But the universe, Anna was about to discover, has a strange way of recycling our gifts. Talents we bury out of necessity don't die. They just lie dormant, waiting for the right moment to resurface in ways we could never predict. And soon, very soon, that voice she thought she'd silenced forever would be the only thing standing between life and death for a man the entire world had already given up on. But for now, as Anna folded another set of clean hospital sheets and checked the clock to see how long until she could see, Clarice again, she had no idea that her next great performance was just a few corridors away, waiting in silence for someone who still believed in hearing what no one else could. His name was Marcus Hale, and until 3 weeks ago he was one of the most powerful men in America. Not in the political sense. Marcus despised politicians, considered them cheap actors buying applause with other people's money. His power was different, empire built, not inherited. Hale Luxury Group controlled some of the most coveted luxury brands in the world, watches that cost more than cars, jewelry requiring months' advance appointments, boutique hotels where celebrities paid fortunes for privacy. Forbes estimated his net worth at $4.7 billion, but Marcus never cared about the lists. Money was just a tool. Power was the ability to build something that lasted, something that meant excellence. But empires, Marcus learned too late, can rot from within while the facade still shines. 6 months before ending up in a hospital bed with 33 doctors declaring him brain dead, Marcus began noticing discrepancies. Small at first, numbers that didn't quite add up in quarterly financial reports, shipments of precious materials disappearing in transport records, suppliers he didn't recognize appearing on approved invoices. Marcus didn't get to the top by being complacent. He began investigating discreetly, hiring independent forensic auditors, personally tracking supply chains, asking questions that left his vice presidents visibly uncomfortable. What he discovered chilled him to the bone. A massive fraud operation orchestrated from within his own company. Someone, or more likely multiple someones, was using Hale Luxury Group as a front to launder money, substitute authentic materials with counterfeits, and siphon millions through a complex network of shell companies. Worse still, the fraud seemed to go straight to the top of management. People he'd trusted for years, people who dined at his table, who knew his children. Marcus gathered evidence meticulously, prepared a comprehensive dossier, scheduled an extraordinary board meeting to expose everything. He never made it to that meeting. 2 days before, Marcus was driving home from the office, when his car left the road on a curve he'd navigated 1,000 times. Investigators blamed fatigue, perhaps a microsleep. The car struck a tree at nearly 50 miles per hour. The airbag deployed, but Marcus's head hit the steering wheel at an odd angle. When paramedics pulled him from the wreckage, he was unconscious, bleeding from his nose and ears. Severe traumatic brain injury, they said. Massive cerebral edema. His chances were poor. They took him to St. Catherine's Medical Center because it was the closest with a certified trauma neurology unit. Dr. Jason Fox, the chief of medicine, took the case personally. Not every day a billionaire comes through the ER. The first 72 hours were critical. Marcus underwent 3 surgeries to relieve pressure on his skull. He never woke up. Days turned into weeks. The medical team performed all protocol tests for brain function. Electroencephalograms showed minimal activity. Pupillary responses were non-existent. Brainstem reflexes absent. According to all medical markers, Marcus Hale was in a deep coma, progressing toward brain death. Dr. Fox convened a panel of specialists, the best neurologists, neurosurgeons, and coma specialists money could buy. 33 doctors in total, each examining Marcus, reviewing his scans, consulting on his prognosis. The consensus was unanimous: brain death. There was no higher cortical function, no chance of meaningful recovery. Keeping Marcus Hale on machines was prolonging the inevitable, a cruelty masquerading as hope. The family was devastated but resigned. His lawyers began preparing end-of-life documents. The hospital scheduled a date to disconnect life support, 3 weeks after the accident, a Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. But something about the case bothered some people at the hospital, though no one was foolish enough to voice it aloud. How quickly the diagnosis was consolidated, how fast 33 prestigious doctors, some flying in from other cities, gathered to agree. The fact that Marcus's family, usually combative and protective, accepted the recommendation almost immediately. And perhaps strangest of all, the fact that the explosive dossier Marcus had compiled disappeared. His office was cleaned days after the accident for administrative efficiency. His personal computers were remotely wiped by standard security protocols. The forensic auditors he'd hired suddenly couldn't be located. Dr. Jason Fox didn't ask these questions. As a physician, he dealt with facts, not conspiracies. Marcus Hale suffered catastrophic traumatic brain injury. Medicine did what it could. Sometimes, despite all technological advances, all the degrees on walls, all the money in the world, the human brain remains mysterious and unforgiving. When injured beyond a certain point, there's no coming back. That's how Dr. Fox saw it. That's how he explained it to staff. That's how he slept at night. But Marcus Hale, trapped inside a body no one else believed contained consciousness, knew differently. He was there, completely, terribly, inescapably there. He could hear everything. The doctors discussing his death as if it were a foregone conclusion, the lawyers fighting over pieces of his empire, the footsteps coming and going around his bed. He could feel everything. The cold hands of nurses turning his body to prevent bed sores, the sharp sting of IV needles, the tape pulling at the hair on his arm. He could think, remember, understand every word spoken in his presence. But he couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't even blink to signal yes or no. His body had become a perfect prison, and the outside world had lost the key, or perhaps... Marcus was beginning to suspect in the darkest moments of his trapped consciousness, someone had thrown that key away on purpose, because his declared brain death was convenient, wasn't it? Convenient for whoever sabotaged his car, convenient for whoever was profiting from the fraud he was about to expose, convenient for an empire that could be stripped and sold while its owner lay silent, unable to protest. And so Marcus waited in the darkness of his own body, feeling the calendar approaching that Wednesday morning. 3 weeks had passed, now only days remained, hours perhaps, until the doctors disconnected the machines and his silence became permanent. He had built an empire, had commanded rooms full of powerful executives with a single word. But now, when it mattered most, when his own life hung in the balance, Marcus Hale had no voice, unless someone somehow learned to hear the kind of scream that makes no sound. Anna hated night shifts, but they were all she could get as the newest person on staff. 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., 3 nights a week, wandering through dimly lit corridors where life and death waged their quietest battles. The neuro-ICU ward at night had a peculiar atmosphere. Not exactly peace, but a loaded quietness, as if the building itself were holding its breath. Machines beeped their mechanical rhythms. Ventilators sighed and hissed. Occasionally, an alarm would sound, sending nurses running. But mostly there was silence. Anna liked the silence at first. It gave her space to think, to process everything that had changed in her life. But lately, the silence had begun to weigh on her in strange ways. Maybe it was because she spent her nights caring for people who couldn't respond, comatose patients, stroke victims, brain injury cases like billionaire Marcus Hale in Suite 407. She cleaned their bodies, adjusted their feeding tubes, turned them to prevent bed sores, and they never acknowledged her presence. It was like caring for living statues. It left Anna feeling invisible in ways even the brightest spotlights never had. So she started singing. Softly at first, just humming while she worked, more to keep herself awake than anything else. But gradually, it became something more deliberate. Anna began thinking of singing not as performance, but as presence, a way of telling these silent patients that they weren't alone, that someone saw their humanity even when their bodies had become medical projects. She didn't know if they could hear her. Science suggested probably not, but it made Anna feel less like a ghost moving through a museum of flesh. She had a route in the neuro-ICU, 12 patients, checked every hour. Suite 407 was her 5th stop. Marcus Hale, 42 years old, declared brain dead, disconnection scheduled in 72 hours. His chart told the clinical story with brutal efficiency: severe blunt trauma, decompression surgeries, irreversible neurological damage. But what always struck Anna when she entered his room was how he didn't look dead. His chest rose and fell with the ventilator, yes, but there was color in his face. His lips weren't blue. His hands, when she held them to check his pulse, were warm. Maybe it was foolish of her, but he seemed more asleep than dead. It was Tuesday, 2:37 a.m., when something changed. Anna was checking Marcus's catheter, singing absent-mindedly, "You'll Be in My Heart," the song she sang to Clarice, the lyrics coming out automatically while her hands worked mechanically. She reached the chorus, her voice rising on those familiar notes. "For one so small, you seem so strong." And then she saw it. Just a flash, so brief she almost thought she'd imagined it. Marcus's fingers, his right hand resting beside his body, twitched. Not a random spasm, not an involuntary reflex. A deliberate rhythmic twitch, almost as if he were tapping to the beat. Anna froze, her voice dying mid-word. She stared at that hand, her heart suddenly thundering against her ribs. "Mr. Hale," she whispered, though she knew it was useless. The doctors had been clear he couldn't hear her, couldn't respond. But still, something in her, some instinct she couldn't name, made her start singing again. The same song, the same melody, watching that hand with the intensity of a hawk. And it happened again. This time Anna was sure. When she sang "My Arms Will Hold You," Marcus's fingers twitched again. 1, 2, 3 soft taps against the sheet. Anna felt her scalp tingle. She leaned in, bringing her face close to his, studying him desperately for any other sign. His eyes were closed, his features motionless, but there was something almost imperceptible. The corner of his mouth. Had it moved? Just a fraction, maybe. Or was she seeing what she wanted to see, projecting consciousness where there was none? Anna pulled back, her mind racing. She should call someone, report this. But report what exactly? That she thought she saw fingers moving. Head nurse Sharon already considered her too dramatic, too emotional for the work. And Dr. Fox, Dr. Fox treated nursing assistants as little more than glorified janitors. If she went to them with this, they'd dismiss her instantly. Worse, they might think she was making things up, that she wasn't fit for the job. She could get fired. And if she got fired, she'd lose access to Clarice, lose the stability she'd sacrificed everything for. But what if she was right? What if Marcus Hale wasn't brain dead but locked in, conscious but paralyzed, trapped in his own body while the world prepared to disconnect him? Anna had read about locked-in syndrome during her training, those rare and horrifying cases where the brain is completely awake, but the body is completely unresponsive. It was a difficult diagnosis to make because the symptoms were almost identical to deep coma. It required careful observation, specific tests, and above all, someone willing to look for signs that were easy to miss. 33 doctors had examined Marcus Hale, specialists with decades of experience, with every diagnostic tool available. How could a 2-month nursing assistant notice something they all missed? The sheer arrogance of the idea made her want to laugh at herself, but then she looked at that hand again, at those fingers she was absolutely certain had moved in response to her voice, and something stubborn and fierce took root in her chest. Anna had spent her life learning to trust her instincts about sound and response. A singer lives and dies by the ability to read an audience, feel when a note resonates, know when a connection is made, and every bone in her body, every nerve trained by music, was screaming that something had just happened in this room. Marcus Hale had responded. She didn't know how, she didn't know why no one else had noticed, but she knew what she'd felt. "I see you," Anna whispered, her hand trembling as she reached out and gently held Marcus's fingers. "I don't know if you can hear me, but if you can, I see you. I see, and I'm not going to let them give up on you, not yet." It was a foolish promise from someone with zero power, but Anna had made similar promises before to Clarice when doctors suggested maybe it was time to consider how aggressive to continue treatment, and she'd fought for her daughter with everything she had. Maybe, just maybe, there was a reason she was here, in this corridor, on this shift, caring for this specific patient. Maybe some voices weren't made for stages, but for hearing screams no one else could. Anna finished her checks, but no more song left her lips that night. She was too busy thinking, planning, trying to figure out how to make anyone believe the impossible. As she left room 407, she didn't know that Marcus Hale, trapped in his silence, was crying tears that couldn't fall, screaming words that couldn't form, clinging to the only thing that had penetrated his darkness in weeks. The whispered promise from a stranger who, against all logic, refused to give up. Anna spent the rest of her shift in a kind of electric fog, torn between paralyzing doubt and fierce certainty. Every hour she returned to room 407, always finding an excuse, rechecking vitals, adjusting his positioning, noting his fluid intake. And each time, when she was sure she was alone, she'd sing softly. Sometimes Marcus reacted, sometimes he didn't. But there were enough moments, a finger twitch here, an almost imperceptible change in his breathing there, to keep Anna's conviction burning. When her shift ended at 7 a.m., Anna didn't go straight to see Clarice as she usually did. Instead, she waited in the break room, drinking bad coffee and rehearsing what she'd say until the day shift arrived for handoff. She needed to report this properly, through the right channels. Sharon Porter, the neuro-ICU head nurse, was her best bet. Experienced, respected, known for advocating for her patients even when doctors wanted to give up. Anna found her at the nursing station, reviewing charts with the impatient efficiency of someone who'd seen too much and had little tolerance for nonsense. "Sharon, can I talk to you a minute? About the patient in 407. Sharon looked up, her tired eyes narrowing slightly. "Marcus Hale, what about him?" Anna took a deep breath. "I think he might be responding to stimuli, specifically auditory stimuli. Music." The silence that followed was so thick, Anna could almost feel it pressing against her skin. Sharon put down her pen slowly, her expression shifting from curiosity to something closer to pity. "Anna, honey, did you read his chart? 33 specialists evaluated this man. Extensive EEGs, advanced imaging. He was declared brain dead by complete consensus. What do you think you saw?" "His fingers," Anna said, hating how defensive her voice sounded. "They twitched in response to music I was singing, not just once, but multiple times. A clear pattern." Sharon sighed, and that sigh contained the weight of 1,000 similar conversations, with desperate family members seeing miracles where there was only dying biology. "Sweetie, you're new here, so I'm going to be direct. What you described are spinal reflexes, involuntary movements that can occur even in brain-dead patients. It doesn't indicate consciousness." "But it was in time with the music," Anna began. "Coincidence," Sharon cut her off, not unkindly. "Confirmation bias. You were looking for a response, so your brain found a pattern where there was only random movement." Anna felt frustration burning in her throat. "What if it's locked-in syndrome? That can present exactly like deep coma." "Anna," Sharon's voice hardened, "locked-in syndrome is extraordinarily rare. Dr. Fox and his team did specific tests for locked-in. Voluntary eye movement, blink response, all negative. This case is closed. Mr. Hale will be disconnected in 60 hours, and that's a mercy, not a tragedy." The words hit Anna like physical slaps. Sharon continued, "You're too emotionally involved, I understand. You have your own little girl fighting for her life a few floors up. But you need to learn to separate your personal emotions from your professional work, or this profession will devour you alive." Anna felt tears prick her eyes and hated them. But what could she say? How could she make Sharon understand? This wasn't about emotional projection. It was about something she'd seen, something she knew in her gut was wrong. Can we just do more tests just to be sure? Sharon shook her head. Protocol has been followed. We're not going to subject this man to more tests based on nothing. Now, if you don't mind, I have morning medications to distribute. She turned, dismissal complete. She should have let it go, should have accepted defeat, returned to her work, trusted that more experienced people knew better. But something stubborn and furious refused to die in her chest. So Anna went straight to the top. If Sharon wouldn't listen, maybe Dr. Jason Fox, the chief of medicine, could. She found him making rounds in the neurological ward, surrounded by residents who followed his every word like disciples. Anna waited until he finished examining a patient, then approached. "Dr. Fox, can I speak to you about the patient in suite 407? Dr. Jason Fox turned, and Anna immediately realized from his face that interrupting him had been a mistake. He was a man in his late 50s, perfectly groomed grey hair, elegant frames, and that particular kind of arrogance that comes from decades of being the smartest person in any room. "You are Anna Thompson, nursing assistant. Sir, I believe Marcus Hale might be responding to auditory stimuli, music. I observed consistent finger movements. Stop." The single word came out like a whip. Dr. Fox removed his glasses, cleaned them deliberately, then looked at Anna with the kind of exaggerated patience normally reserved for particularly slow children. "Miss Thompson, do you have medical training beyond your nursing assistant certificate?" "No, sir, but do you have any training in neurology, EEG interpretation?" "No, but I know what I saw." "No," Dr. Fox cut her off. "You don't know. You think you know. There's a monumental difference between those two things." Anna's face burned, but she forced herself to stand firm. "What if it's locked-in syndrome? The symptoms can mimic—" Dr. Fox stepped closer. "Do you have any idea how many resources were dedicated to the Hale case? We have functional MRIs, neural conduction studies, EEGs showing absence of response. 33 separate and independent doctors reviewed this case. Now you, with 2 months of experience and 0 formal medical education, are telling me we're all wrong? That you singing lullabies in the middle of the night somehow discovered something an entire team of specialists missed?" "Sounds like Semmelweis," Anna said quietly. "Excuse me, what?" "Ignaz Semmelweis, the 19th century doctor who told other doctors to wash their hands. They ridiculed him, ruined his career. Turns out he was absolutely right." Dr. Fox's face went pale, then red. "You are comparing me to doctors who rejected germ theory. The sheer arrogance of someone in your position." "It's not arrogance to ask you to just look," Anna said, her voice trembling but firm. 5 minutes. If I'm wrong, I'll never raise this again. But what if we're about to kill a conscious man because no one wanted to double-check?" For a moment, just a moment, Anna saw something pass across Dr. Fox's face. Then it hardened again. "Miss Thompson, I'll be perfectly clear. If you raise this issue again, with anyone, for any reason, I will personally ensure you're dismissed from this hospital. Not for misconduct, but for incompetence, for inability to follow established protocols, for allowing emotional bias to compromise your judgment." He turned to his residents. "This is a perfect example of why medical hierarchies exist. When people without adequate training start making diagnoses based on feelings, patients die." And then he was gone, leaving Anna alone in the corridor with burning cheeks and trembling hands. She'd been dismissed, ridiculed, threatened, and worse still, no one had even considered the possibility she might be right. Anna went to the pediatric floor to see Clarice. Her little girl was sleeping, IV tubes attached to her small arm. Anna sat beside her bed and held her little hand, finally bringing tears she'd been holding since the confrontation. "Mummy might have just lost her job," she whispered. "But what if there's a man downstairs who's screaming inside, but no one can hear him because they stopped listening?" She stayed for an hour trying to figure out what to do. She could let this go, keep her job, keep the stability Clarice needed. But then Anna thought of Marcus Hale with 60 hours of life remaining, and she knew that if she did nothing, that knowledge would haunt her for the rest of her days. Sometimes you have to choose between security and conscience. Mommy has to do something very scary now, but I'm going to make you proud. I promise. Then she stood and went looking for the only type of person who could possibly help her now. Not a doctor, but a lawyer. Because if the medical system wouldn't listen, maybe the legal system would have to make them. Anna knew nothing about lawyers. Her previous interaction with legal professionals had been limited to reviewing recording contracts a lifetime ago. But she knew how to use Google, and she knew what to look for. Lawyers specializing in medical malpractice and patient rights cases, preferably someone with a track record of taking on large institutions. The search led her to Rachel Morrison, a partner at a small firm who'd made headlines 3 years ago by successfully suing a hospital for prematurely disconnecting life support from a patient who, it turned out, was conscious. Rachel's office was 3 blocks from the hospital. Anna showed up without an appointment during her lunch break, still wearing her scrubs. The receptionist initially tried to schedule her 2 weeks out, but Anna, acting on pure desperation, simply said, "A man is going to die in 56 hours if I don't speak with her today, please." Maybe it was the raw tremor in her voice. The receptionist disappeared through a door, returned 2 minutes later. 15 minutes, that's all she has. Rachel Morrison wasn't what Anna expected. Small, maybe 5'2", brown hair in a messy ponytail. But her eyes, sharp, assessing, completely focused, made it immediately clear that underestimating her would be a fatal mistake. 56 hours, Rachel said, skipping preliminaries. "Tell me." Anna told everything. The night she'd sung in Marcus's room, the finger movements, her attempts to report through proper channels, the hospital's refusal to even consider the possibility, the public humiliation by Dr. Fox, the veiled threats. When she finished, Rachel was leaning forward, fingers interlaced under her chin. "Do you have any evidence, besides your own testimony?" Anna shook her head miserably. "Just what I saw." "Courts deal with evidence, not conviction," Rachel said. "Against 33 medical experts, your testimony alone won't sway a judge. We need something objective, documentation, recorded proof." "How? They won't let me near him again." "Then don't talk about it," Rachel said calmly. "Document, you still have access to his room?" Anna nodded slowly. She'd work again that night. "Then you're going to gather evidence, discreetly." Rachel slid a paper across the table with a list. 1. Video of reactions. 2. Timestamp. 3. Multiple musical stimuli. 4. Volume variation. 5. Control period without stimulus. Anna stared. "You want me to secretly film?" "I want you to document patient responses to stimuli," Rachel corrected. "Technically part of your job. Using your cell phone is unconventional, but not inherently illegal." "This is a giant gray area," Anna said. "Welcome to medical law," Rachel responded. "This is an extremely difficult case. Our chance of success is maybe 20%, but 20% is better than 0. Are you willing to risk your job for this? Possibly your entire career?" Anna thought of Marcus screaming silently, thought of Clarice fighting floors above, thought of all the silenced voices no one bothered to hear. "Yes," Anna said. "I'm willing." That night, Anna arrived for her shift with her smartphone weighing like lead in her pocket. She'd spent her life being a good girl, always respecting authority. This sensation of about to shatter rules completely was terrifying, but also strangely liberating. Tonight she would matter. Sharon was working, a complication. But Anna waited until midnight, when Sharon was busy in another corridor, then slipped into suite 407. Marcus looked exactly the same, quiet, motionless, connected to machines. Anna set up her phone on an improvised stand, positioning it to capture Marcus's face and both hands. Her heart thundered. Then she pressed record and began. "You'll Be in My Heart," the song that had triggered the first response. She sang softly, watching Marcus with scientific intensity. For 30 seconds, nothing. Then, there, his fingers on his right hand, 3 taps aligning with the melody's rhythm. Anna's heart leaped. She continued varying the volume. The response continued, patterns too consistent to be random. She documented everything. Different songs, classical, pop, improvised. Marcus responded more strongly to emotional, slow melodies. Anna tested silence periods, 2 minutes without sound, and observed no movements. She resumed, and responses returned. She moved closer, and reactions intensified, moved away, and they diminished but didn't disappear. After 40 minutes, Anna had video evidence showing consistent, reproducible responses to specific auditory stimuli, not random spasms, patterned, timed reactions that ceased during control and returned with stimulus. It was proof. But then, something happened. Singing Amazing Grace. She noticed moisture in the corner of Marcus's eye, a tear escaping down the side of his face. Anna froze. "Marcus, if you can hear me, I see you, I promise I see you." Then she did something that violated professional boundaries but felt profoundly human. She reached out and held his hand. Not to check pulse, just to hold, to offer connection, presence. And Marcus Hale felt that touch pierce the darkness like a ray of sunlight. For weeks there had only been clinical, impersonal touches, but this was different, intentional, gentle, human. He tried with every fiber of consciousness to make his fingers respond, "Yes, I'm here, please don't give up on me." And miraculously, his fingers moved. Not a twitch, but a deliberate squeeze, weak but unmistakable, around Anna's hand. She gasped, tears surging. "My God, you're there. You're really there." She squeezed back, a silent conversation through touch. In that moment, something changed between them. A connection forged through something fundamental, the recognition of one soul by another. Eventually, pragmatism pulled her back. 52 minutes of recording, and Sharon approaching in the corridor. Quickly, Anna stopped recording, hid her phone, and began routine checks. When Sharon appeared, Anna was the image of professionalism. "Everything okay here?" "Just being thorough," Anna said, her voice steady. Sharon nodded and moved on. When her shift ended, Anna went straight to Rachel's office. The lawyer opened the door in casual clothes, holding coffee. "Did you get it?" Anna waved her phone. 52 minutes, multiple responses, and Rachel... He squeezed my hand deliberately. "I got it on video." Rachel connected the phone to her laptop and watched in silence for long minutes. Finally, she looked up. "This is good. This is really good. But it's not foolproof. A hostile doctor could still argue spinal reflexes, coincidence." Frustration exploded in Anna's voice. "The patterns are clear." "I completely agree," Rachel said, "but I'm not the one who needs convincing. A hospital staking reputation on brain death? They'll do their best to explain this away." Anna sank down, exhausted. "So it was for nothing." "I didn't say that," Rachel corrected. "It's enough for an emergency petition for judicial intervention. We allege reasonable doubt sufficient to delay withdrawal of life support until additional tests. We have evidence, precedent, and time, 50 hours. What if the judge doesn't pause? Then Marcus dies in 2 days, and we failed. But at least we tried. At least someone fought." Anna nodded. "Do it. File the petition." Rachel smiled, fiercely. "You're about to start a war against one of the city's most powerful hospitals. It's going to get very ugly." Anna thought of Marcus counting his last hours, of Clarice refusing to give up. Let it be ugly, at least we'll be fighting. And in Suite 407, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in weeks. Not hope, but possibility. The smallest possibility that someone might finally hear his silent scream before it was too late. The next 36 hours unfolded like a war machine, accelerating into motion. Rachel filed the emergency petition at noon, a 27-page document alleging sufficient reasonable doubt about Marcus Hale's brain death diagnosis to justify delaying withdrawal of life support. The petition included Anna's statements, video analysis, citations of medical literature on locked-in syndrome, and a constitutional argument about right to life. St. Catherine's received notification at 2:47 p.m., and their response was devastating. Within 2 hours, they'd assembled a legal team led by Thornton and Associates, one of the most aggressive medical defense firms on the East Coast. By 5 p.m., they'd filed motions to dismiss, arguing the petition lacked merit, that Anna had no legal standing to act on Marcus's behalf, that the video evidence was scientifically worthless. But what hit Anna hardest wasn't the legal response. It was the whisper campaign that began at the hospital almost immediately. When she showed up for her shift that night, she could feel the stares. Conversation stopped when she entered rooms. Previously friendly colleagues now avoided her. Sharon called her aside, her face a mask of professional disappointment. "Anna, you need to understand the position you've put me in," Sharon said, voice vibrating with contained anger. "I supported you, and now you've sued the hospital, secretly filmed a patient without consent." "I didn't sue anyone," Anna interrupted. "I just asked a judge to look at evidence." "You made it impossible for anyone here to trust you're not secretly recording, planning to sue them," Sharon said. "I really thought you were different. But you're just another one with a savior complex." The words hurt because Anna had respected Sharon. "What if I'm right? What if Marcus Hale is conscious and we kill him because no one wanted to double check?" Sharon looked at her for a long moment. "Medicine isn't about being right. It's about recognizing your knowledge limits and trusting systems. You violated those systems, and no matter how this ends, there will be consequences." She paused. "You're removed from any care assignments involving Marcus Hale, effective immediately. If you're caught near that room, it's grounds for instant dismissal." Anna spent that shift in isolated fog, but strangely, the more she was pushed out, the clearer her conviction became. And the ferocity of the hospital's reaction only reinforced her belief that there was something here they desperately didn't want examined. The hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. the next morning, less than 24 hours before Marcus's scheduled disconnection. Anna barely slept. The courthouse was less impressive than she expected. Rachel met her at 8:45, her court suit a marked transformation. "How are you feeling?" "Terrified," Anna admitted. "Good. Use that." The courtroom filled quickly. On the hospital's side, 5 lawyers, 3 administrators, including Dr. Fox, 2 neurologists. On Anna's side, Rachel herself, and the crushing weight of knowing they were terribly outmatched. Judge Chen entered at 9:03, an Asian-American woman in her 50s with rimless glasses and an expression that revealed nothing. "This is an extraordinary petition," she began. "Miss Morrison, you're asking this court to essentially override the medical judgment of 33 specialists based on a nursing assistant's observations. Do you understand how high that bar is?" Rachel stood. "I understand, Your Honor, but the question isn't whether I can prove the diagnosis is wrong. It's whether there's sufficient doubt to justify a pause before taking irreversible action. And respectfully, the video evidence shows consistent patterned responses that at least warrant additional investigation." The hospital's lead attorney stood. Richard Thornton, silver hair, expensive suit. "Your Honor, this isn't doubt. It's wishful thinking. The supposed evidence shows nothing more than spinal reflexes any first-year neurologist could identify. Allowing this type of challenge to proceed would open floodgates for anyone with a smartphone to second-guess legitimate medical decisions." Judge Chen looked at Anna. "Miss Thompson, stand up." Anna stood, legs feeling less stable than she'd like. "You understand that by making these allegations, you're essentially accusing multiple physicians of incompetence?" "I'm not accusing anyone of anything, Your Honor," Anna said, voice surprisingly firm. "I'm just asking them to look again. Locked-in syndrome mimics brain death almost perfectly. If there's even a chance—" "There is no chance," Dr. Fox said abruptly, half rising before lawyers pulled him back. His composure had slipped, showing raw frustration beneath. Judge Chen raised an eyebrow. "Dr. Fox, you'll have your chance. Miss Thompson, continue." Anna took a deep breath. "Your Honor, I've spent months caring for coma patients. I learned to recognize reflexes versus purposeful movement. What I saw with Marcus Hale was different. Responsive, patterned, consistent, and when I held his hand offer, her voice cracked. He squeezed back. Not a spasm, a deliberate, gentle squeeze that lasted several seconds, and tears came from his eyes during emotionally resonant music. "Tears are an autonomic reflex," a neurologist began. Judge Chen raised a hand. "Doctor, were you asked to speak? Then please don't interrupt." She turned back to Anna. "Miss Thompson, do you have any training in neurology?" "No, Your Honor, but I have a daughter with a rare neurological condition. I spent 2 years learning to read subtle signs of consciousness, and I know what it's like when doctors give up too quickly, because it's easier than continuing to try. The courtroom went quiet. Judge Chen studied Anna, then looked at Rachel. The videos. I want to see them. For the next 40 minutes, the court watched Anna's recordings. Anna narrated what she'd documented. Hospital lawyers repeated they were reflexes, but even Anna could see Judge Chen was really watching, really considering. When the last clip finished, she leaned back. Dr. Fox, approach. Dr. Fox stood, approached. Doctor, you personally examined Mr. Hale? Yes, Your Honor, multiple times. And you're absolutely certain there's no possibility of preserved consciousness? A pause. Just a fraction of a second. Yes, Your Honor, the clinical evidence is overwhelming. But not impossible. Medical diagnoses are absolute, or are there levels of certainty? Another pause. There are levels. But in this case, the consensus of 33 specialists represents the highest level of certainty clinically achievable. And yet, the judge said slowly, there were documented cases of locked-in patients erroneously diagnosed as comatose. Yes? Dr. Fox looked physically pained. Extremely rare cases, yes. How rare is too rare to check before ending someone's life? The courtroom was so silent, Anna could hear her own heart. Dr. Fox didn't answer immediately, and in that silence, Anna saw something shift in Judge Chen's expression. Here's my position. I'm not a doctor, but I can assess whether there's sufficient doubt to justify caution. And frankly, watching these videos, reading about locked-in misdiagnoses, hearing the absolute certainty with which experts dismiss any possibility, it troubles me. She looked at hospital lawyers. If you're right, a few extra days of life support won't matter. But if Miss Thompson is right, we're about to commit the kind of error that haunts civilizations. The hospital lawyer paled. Your Honor, the hospital has protocols. Protocols don't substitute for due care. Judge Chen cut him off. I'm granting a temporary restraining order, delaying withdrawal of life support for 72 hours. In that time, the hospital will conduct additional evaluation for locked-in syndrome, specifically including the types of musical stimulus tests Miss Thompson documented under independent observation. She banged her gavel. 72 hours, ladies and gentlemen. Use them wisely. The courtroom erupted. Rachel grabbed Anna's arm, face split in a fierce smile. We did it. Holy God, we actually did it. But Anna barely heard. She was looking across the room at Dr. Fox, who was staring back with an expression she couldn't fully read. Anger, yes, but something else too. Fear, concern. Or maybe, just maybe, the smallest, most fragile beginning of doubt about what he thought he knew with such certainty. Whatever it was, Anna had bought Marcus Hale time. 72 additional hours of life. Now she just had to make sure they didn't waste them. The court victory, it turned out, was just the start of the storm, not its end. The moment Judge Chen's decision was announced, St. Catherine's Medical Center mobilized a response that could only be called total war. Within 6 hours, they had filed an emergency appeal. Within 12, they had leaked the story to sympathetic media outlets, with headlines screaming about judicial overreach in medicine and dangerous precedent putting patients at risk. By nightfall, Anna Thompson was no longer a concerned nurse aide. She was a pawn in a full-scale public relations battle over medical autonomy versus judicial oversight. Anna experienced everything in disconnected fragments, like pieces of broken glass she couldn't gather into a coherent picture. Her suspension from the hospital came in a formal letter delivered by mail at 4 p.m. Pending investigation into patient privacy violations and unprofessional conduct. No pay, effective immediately. Her phone started ringing incessantly, reporters who had somehow gotten her number, wanting statements, asking for interviews. Rachel advised her to say nothing, to let the courts handle it. But silence felt like cowardice when headlines were painting her as a hysterical fanatic or worse. The worst came at 7:23 p.m. when Anna went upstairs to visit Clarice and found the director of the pediatric ward waiting outside her daughter's room. Miss Thompson, we need to talk about Clarice's care arrangements. Anna's stomach plummeted. What? Why, her treatments are going well. It's not about treatment, the director said, her voice carefully neutral. It's about complications. Given your recent legal action against this hospital, there have been concerns raised about potential conflicts of interest, about whether it is appropriate for Clarice to continue receiving care here while you are engaged in active litigation. You're telling me to take my sick daughter somewhere else. Anna's voice rose despite her best efforts to keep it level. She's in the middle of an experimental treatment protocol. We can't just transfer to another hospital without setting back months of progress. No one is saying you have to transfer, the director backpedaled slightly. Just recommending that you consider whether remaining here is in Clarice's best interests, given the circumstances. It was a veiled threat delivered with false concern, and both of them knew it. Anna felt rage boiling in her veins. This is retaliation. I could sue. You could, the director agreed calmly. But it would take months, years possibly, and in the meantime, Clarice would still need care. From doctors and nurses who... She paused meaningfully. Well, you understand. Anna understood perfectly. Stay and make Clarice a victim of institutional hostility, subtly worse treatment, slower responses, the kind of neglect that could never be proven, but that everyone knew happened when you made enemies in the wrong place. Or transfer Clarice, interrupt her care, risk setbacks, not real choices, just different degrees of defeat. She stood by Clarice's bed that night for hours, watching her little girl sleep, feeling the weight of all the decisions she'd made crushing her from all directions. She had sacrificed her singing career for Clarice. Now she had sacrificed her hospital job for Marcus Hale. What if these choices cost Clarice her medical care? What if her principle, her stubbornness, her refusal to be silent when told to, ended up harming the one person who mattered more than anything? Did I mess up, baby? Anna whispered, brushing Clarice's hair from her face. I was so certain I was doing the right thing, but what if I've just become arrogant? What if everyone else is right, and I am just a stubborn fool who doesn't know when to quit? Clarice stirred in her sleep, her lips curving into something that might have been a smile. And in that millisecond instant, Anna remembered why she had started all of this. Because Clarice taught her that fighting for people who can't fight for themselves is never wrong. That dignity means seeing humanity where systems see inconvenience. That sometimes the strongest thing you can do is refuse to give up when everyone tells you there's no hope. So she wiped her eyes, kissed Clarice's forehead, and went home to prepare for the hell the next day would bring. The hospital's ethics board would convene at 9 a.m. to decide whether the remaining 66 hours of the Judge ES order would be used as intended, testing Marcus properly, or fought every step of the way. Anna wasn't sure what to expect from that meeting, but Rachel assured her it would be critical. Ethics boards are tricky, Rachel explained during a late-night call as Anna lay awake in her bed staring at the ceiling. They are technically independent, but composed of people who work for or with the hospital. Dr. Fox has enormous influence. If he convinces them these tests are unnecessary or even harmful, they can recommend non-compliance with the court order and force the judge to intervene again. Can we be there? Anna asked. At the meeting. You can, Rachel said, as the person who instigated the order. But Anna, this isn't going to be like court. There'll be no formal rules, no judge keeping things civil. It's just you, walking into a room full of people who already see you as the enemy, and trying to convince them they got everything wrong. So like Tuesday, Anna murmured. Rachel chuckled, a short, humorless sound. Yeah, like Tuesday. The ethics board meeting was held in a windowless conference room on the administrative fourth floor, a stripped-down space that smelled of bad coffee and tension. The board consisted of 7 people, 3 doctors, including Dr. Fox, who sat at the head of the table like a king presiding over a lesser court, 2 hospital administrators, a patient representative and an ethics professor from a nearby university, who was supposed to provide impartial outside perspective. Anna sat in an isolated chair facing them, feeling less like a participant and more like a defendant awaiting verdict. Rachel sat beside her, her laptop open, legal notations prepared, but even the usually unflappable lawyer looked strained. Dr. Fox opened the proceedings without preamble. We are here to discuss the court order requiring us to perform additional testing on Marcus Hale, before proceeding with the agreed-upon and ethically sound withdrawal of life support. I want to be clear. This board is not here to re-examine the medical diagnosis. That has already been established by 33 specialists. We are here to determine if conforming to this order serves the patient's best interests and sound medical ethics principles. Anna couldn't hold back. How can it not be in his best interests to run more tests before you kill him? The room went glacial. Dr. Fox looked at her as if she were an insect to be crushed. Ms. Thompson, you will speak when requested. It is not your role to question this process. Actually, said the ethics professor, an older, grey-bearded man named Professor Dennison, if Ms. Thompson is the person who raised concerns leading to the court order, it seems reasonable to hear her out. Dr. Fox looked physically pained but nodded stiffly. Very well, Ms. Thompson. You have 2 minutes to state your position. Then we will proceed with proper medical deliberation. Anna stood up, her hands trembling slightly. She looked around the table, trying to read faces. Doctor. Fox, hostile and dismissive. The 2 other doctors, carefully neutral. The administrators, visibly concerned about legal liability. The patient representative, a middle-aged woman whose eyes actually seemed to meet Anna's with something like curiosity. And Professor Dennison, leaning back in his chair, fingers steepled, expression unreadable. I am not a doctor, Anna began, deciding that honesty was her only path. The next 48 hours unfolded with the mechanical precision of an execution, though no one was certain who was being executed. Dr. Fox fulfilled the court order, but with the kind of malicious compliance that turned victory into torture. The tests began, but under conditions designed to fail. Anna was informed at 6 a.m. by text from Rachel that she'd be permitted to be present during the stimulus protocol, but only as an observer, forbidden from touching Marcus or participating in any way. The medical team would be led by Dr. Fox personally, along with 2 outside neurologists brought in specifically to ensure objectivity. The session would be recorded by hospital cameras, every second documented for potential legal scrutiny. When Anna arrived at Suite 407 at 9 a.m., the room had been transformed into something between laboratory and courtroom. Cameras mounted on tripods from multiple angles, extra EEG monitoring equipment installed, 5 doctors and 3 nurses clustered around Marcus's bed like a wall of judgment in white coats, and at the center of it all, Marcus himself, still, silent, unconscious of all the drama swirling around his inert body. Dr. Fox barely acknowledged Anna's presence. Miss Thompson, you'll stand in that corner. You will not speak, will not intervene, will not interfere in any way. Understood? Anna nodded, throat too tight for words. Rachel was beside her, laptop open. The protocol began with brutal clinical efficiency. Dr. Fox explained for the cameras, we'll be testing patient responsiveness to various auditory stimuli over a 90-minute period. Responses will be measured via EEG, heart rate monitoring, and visual observation of any voluntary movement. He nodded to a nurse, who turned on a portable speaker. What came out wasn't music. It was noise, random sounds, mechanical beeps, harsh static, dissonant frequencies that made Anna's teeth ache. She watched the EEG monitor. Flat lines, minimal variation, no movement from Marcus. Dr. Fox noted something on his clipboard, satisfaction in the corners of his eyes. Stimulus 1, no response, he said to the camera. Another track played, more noise, this time interspersed with sudden loud tones that made Anna jump. Marcus remained motionless. Stimulus 2, no response. This continued for 20 torturous minutes, sound after sound, each more clinically sterile and emotionally empty than the last. Anna realized what Dr. Fox was doing. He was technically testing auditory stimulus while carefully avoiding the kind that had provoked Marcus' responses. No melodic music, no emotionally resonant content, just sterile noise never meant to evoke consciousness, only to prove its absence. You need to use real music, Anna finally burst out. Melodies, harmonies, something with emotional content. Miss Thompson, you were warned not to interfere, Dr. Fox said without even looking at her. Auditory stimulus is auditory stimulus. If the patient were conscious, he'd respond to any sound, not just those you deem sufficiently musical. That's scientifically incorrect, Rachel interjected. her lawyer voice cutting through the air. Research on minimal consciousness and locked-in states clearly shows responses are often specific to emotionally salient stimuli. Random noise doesn't activate the same neural pathways as structured music. Doctor, if you're not testing the specific type of stimulus that provoked responses, then this protocol is scientifically worthless. One of the outside neurologists, Dr. Patel from Johns Hopkins, cleared his throat. She has a point, Jason. The protocol should include structured musical stimuli, not just test tones. That's how locked-in assessments are conducted in the literature. Dr. Fox looked physically pained, but nodded rigidly. Very well. Nurse Chen, please select something musical. The nurse clicked through a playlist on the laptop, chose randomly. Classical music began. Some Baroque piece Anna didn't recognize. Technically complex, but emotionally cold. She watched Marcus's monitors. A slight heart rate variation, maybe? Hard to say. No visible movement. Try You'll Be in My Heart, Anna said desperately, the song that provoked the strongest responses in my videos. Please. Dr. Fox sighed with elaborate exasperation. Nurse Chen, see if you can find that song. It took 3 minutes to find a version. When it began playing instrumental version, not Anna's voice but the same melody, Anna practically stopped breathing, watching Marcus with intensity that made her eyes burn. At first, nothing. The opening bars played through the speaker, filling the sterile room. Marcus's EEG remained essentially flat, his face expressionless, fingers motionless. Anna felt despair rising in her throat. Was she wrong? Then, so subtly Anna almost missed it, Marcus's index finger twitched. Once. Twice. A third twitch that synchronized perfectly with the music's rhythm. There, Anna gasped, pointing. His fingers... I saw nothing, Dr. Fox said flatly. Random muscle contraction. It's not random, it's synchronized with the beat, Dr. Patel interjected, leaning closer. Wait, replay that section. Let's see if he replicates. The music returned to the beginning, played again, and this time there was no possible doubt. Marcus's fingers moved, 3 distinct contractions aligning precisely with the melody's rhythm. And more, his heart rate monitor showed measurable acceleration. His EEG pattern shifted, showing spikes of activity that hadn't been there seconds before. My God, whispered one of the nurses. Dr. Patel pulled out a flashlight, checked Marcus's eyes. Pupillary reflex. There's something there. Jason, are you seeing this? Dr. Fox was pale, his face a mask of something between shock and horror. It's not. Spinal reflexes can mimic... Stop calling everything spinal reflexes, Dr. Okafor said sharply, appearing in the doorway in surgical scrubs. Jason, that is temporally coupled response to specific stimulus. That's not reflex, that's consciousness. The room exploded in conversation, and through it all Anna couldn't take her eyes off Marcus, because something else was happening. Tears were streaming down his face, not just reflexive moisture, but real tears flowing freely while the music continued. Anna didn't think. She simply moved, pushing through the wall of doctors, going straight to Marcus's side. Anna, don't, Rachel began, but it was too late. Anna took Marcus's hand. I'm here, she whispered, voice breaking. Marcus, I'm here. You're not alone. And Marcus Hale, trapped in his silent body for unbearable weeks, felt that warm hand around his, and gathered every gram of consciousness he possessed, every fragment of willpower, not crushed by darkness, and did the only thing he could. He squeezed back. Not a twitch, not a contraction. A genuine, deliberate, unmistakable squeeze that lasted 3 full seconds. The room went dead silent. Dr. Patel checked the EEG, eyes widening. There's a massive activity spike corresponding exactly with that movement. That wasn't reflex, that was intentional. He's conscious. My God, he's conscious. Dr. Fox stood completely motionless, his face passing through expressions Anna couldn't name. Shock, disbelief, fear, and something that could be either despair or relief. I don't... 33 specialists. We couldn't have... He stepped back from the monitor, hands shaking. We need more tests, advanced imaging, complete locked-in protocols. If he was conscious this whole time, He didn't finish the sentence, didn't need to. Everyone in the room understood the implications. Anna leaned close to Marcus's face, her voice so soft only he could hear. I know you're there. And I promise, I swear I won't let anyone give up on you again. You're going to get through this, you're going to live. And against all odds, against all medical logic, Marcus's lips trembled. Just the smallest fraction of movement, but enough. He was trying to smile. After weeks of silence, he finally had something like hope. The discovery that Marcus Hale was conscious should have been a moment of triumph. It should have resulted in headlines celebrating the medical miracle, recognition of Anna's persistence, and rapid mobilization of resources. Instead, it unleashed 72 hours of the kind of institutional chaos that Anna could never have predicted. Within the 6 hours following the successful test, the hospital went into full damage control mode. Marcus was moved to a specialized neurocare unit. His family, strangely absent throughout the entire process, suddenly materialized with corporate lawyers. Dr. Fox disappeared from the facility, officially on administrative leave. And Anna, the person who had saved Marcus's life, found herself treated not as a hero, but as a liability. Her suspension, rather than being lifted, was escalated. At 2 p.m., Anna received formal notification not just of suspension, but of pending termination for gross professional misconduct. The charges were devastating: unauthorized filming of a patient without consent, HIPAA violation, conducting medical procedures outside her scope, insubordination, and creating a hostile work environment through unfounded accusations. "Are they suing me?" Anna asked Rachel when they met at the lawyer's office. Her voice sounded distant, dissociated. Rachel looked through the courier-delivered paperwork. Not just suing. Termination for cause, no severance, no unemployment insurance. Reporting you to the state licensing board. And yes, a civil lawsuit seeking damages for defamation, claiming you damaged the doctor's reputations. Anna felt the floor tilt beneath her. But I was right. Marcus is conscious. I saved his life. You exposed that they nearly killed a conscious billionaire, Rachel corrected brutally. From their perspective, you are not a savior. You are the person who documented the medical error, who created legal liability, who turned a routine withdrawal of life support into a potential multi-million-dollar scandal. You are the witness who needs to be discredited. Anna sank into a chair, the weight finally crushing her. I'll lose everything, my job, my license, my ability to support Clarice. Rachel didn't sugarcoat it. Probably. The hospital is in dangerous territory. They nearly committed negligent homicide. But they have massive resources and the motivation to make this go away. Which means making you go away, discrediting your testimony, painting you as unstable. So I should have just let Marcus die? Anna whispered. No, Rachel said firmly. You did the right thing. But doing the right thing doesn't always shield you from the consequences. Sometimes you become the lightning rod for all the anger and fear that powerful institutions feel when they confront their own mistakes. The next few days were a blur of humiliations. The story leaked to the media, not as hero saves billionaire, but as scandal, medical error nearly kills heir. Her name became associated with controversy. The nursing licensing database updated her status to investigation pending, making her effectively unemployable. Anna's savings, already depleted by Clarice's treatments, began to evaporate under legal expenses, and then came the blow that nearly broke her. 8 days after Marcus's awakening, Anna received formal notification. Clarice's experimental treatments were being discontinued due to concerns over protocol viability. The letter was wrapped in clinical language, but the message was crystal clear. Back down quietly, or your daughter pays the price. Anna held that paper with hands shaking violently. Rachel had warned her this might happen, but facing the reality was different. Clarice was finally making progress. Her seizures had lessened. And now, out of petty retaliation, that progress would be snatched away. She went up to Clarice's room that afternoon, unsure how to explain. Clarice was sitting in bed, drawing with crayons. "Mommy!" she squealed, her face lighting up. "Look what I drew!" It was a house, jagged triangle roof, crooked windows, and inside, stick figures. 2, one big and one small, holding hands. "It's us, in our home. When I get better." Anna felt something shatter. She pulled Clarice into her lap, holding her tight, tears finally coming. "Baby, we need to talk about changes." "Ms. Thompson?" A voice at the door. Anna looked up, expecting another administrator with bad news. Instead, it was a woman she didn't recognize. Mid-30s, expensive business suit, hair in an immaculate bun. "I apologize for interrupting. My name is Catherine Brennan. I'm counsel representing Marcus Hale." Anna froze. She hadn't had contact with Marcus since the awakening. How is he?" Catherine smiled. "Making remarkable progress. Intensive physical therapy, speech therapy, relearning movement and speech. Doctors say he had locked-in syndrome due to the precise location of his brain damage. With proper treatment, prognosis is surprisingly good." "That's wonderful," Anna said genuinely. Catherine nodded. "It is. And he knows he owes you his life. When he recovered enough speech, the first thing he did was ask about you. When we explained the legal situation, that the hospital is suing you, that you lost your job, that you face financial ruin, he was furious." She opened her brief, pulled out documents. "Ms. Thompson, Mr. Hale has instructed me to offer full legal assistance. My firm will take over your defense against the hospital pro bono. We will also file a countersuit for whistleblower protection. You were retaliated against for exposing patient endangerment, which is illegal. And finally," Catherine pulled out a separate envelope. "Mr. Hale would like to establish a trust fund for Clarice's care. Experimental treatments, specialists, anything she needs, at any facility you choose. You are no longer at the mercy of this hospital." Anna stared at the documents, unable to process. "Why? I just did what anyone should, but no one else did," Catherine said gently. 33 doctors looked and saw a terminal patient. You looked and saw a person, and you risked everything to fight for someone you didn't even know. Mr. Hale won't forget that, and he won't let you be destroyed for doing the right thing." Clarice tugged on Anna's sleeve. "Mommy, who is that lady?" Anna looked at her daughter, then at Catherine and the documents that represented salvation. "She is—" Anna paused, her voice cracking. "She is someone reminding us that sometimes, when you fight for the right person, they fight back for you." And for the first time in days, Anna allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, the price she paid for the truth wouldn't be one that utterly destroyed her. Not when the person whose life she had saved was determined to make sure she survived the consequences. The final hearing took place 6 weeks after Marcus's awakening in a courtroom larger than the first. Needed to accommodate the media, the lawyers, and the sheer public weight of a case that had become about far more than a man in a hospital bed. It was about institutional accountability, about how much voice an ordinary person should have against expert consensus, about what happens when systems designed to save lives become so rigid that they crush the very people they are meant to protect. Anna sat next to Rachel at the defendant's table. Though technically she wasn't criminally accused, the hospital's civil suit against her and her whistleblower countersuit were being heard simultaneously. Across the aisle, St. Catherine's attorneys occupied 2 full tables, mountains of documentation piled like legal fortifications, and behind them, hospital administrators in expensive suits. Dr. Fox restored to work but visibly diminished. But the person everyone was waiting to see, the one testimony that mattered more than any other, had not yet arrived. Marcus Hale. In the weeks since his awakening, he had remained intensely private, focused on recovery, refusing media interviews. Rumors varied wildly about his actual condition. Judge Chen entered at 10 a.m. sharp. "This hearing will address multiple interconnected issues," she began. "The hospital's lawsuit against Ms. Thompson for misconduct, her countersuit alleging whistleblower retaliation, and more broadly, the systemic issues raised by this case." She looked around the room. "But before we proceed, I understand Mr. Hale wishes to make a statement. Is he present?" The courtroom doors opened, and Marcus Hale walked in, slowly but unassisted, wearing an immaculate suit that couldn't completely hide how much weight he had lost. But his eyes, Anna caught her breath as she met his gaze for the first time since that morning in room 407, were alive, conscious, burning with an intensity that made it impossible to see him as anything less than completely present. He walked to the front of the room, his attorney Catherine at his side. Judge Chen gestured toward the witness stand. "Mr. Hale, are you prepared to testify?" Marcus nodded, his voice when he spoke still slightly slurred but improving. "Yes, Your Honor. There are things that need to be said, things only I can say, because I was there inside that darkness, when everyone thought I was gone. People ask what it is like to be locked in," he began, and the room went dead silent. "It is like being buried alive inside your own body. You hear everything, feel everything, understand every word, but you cannot scream, you cannot nod, you cannot do anything except exist in silence while the world decides if you are worth keeping alive." His voice hardened. "I heard the doctors declare me brain dead. I heard them schedule me to be unplugged, and I was in there screaming internally, begging for someone to see. But no one did. 33 specialists looked at me and saw nothing but biological failure waiting to be shut down." He turned his head, his eyes meeting Dr. Fox's. "I don't blame you for missing the diagnosis initially. Locked-in syndrome is rare, difficult to detect. But I blame you for not looking, for trusting your consensus so much that when one person suggested you might be wrong, you crushed her instead of considering that medicine still doesn't fully understand consciousness." Marcus continued, his voice gaining strength. "Anna Thompson had no credentials, no authority, no reason to care about a stranger billionaire. But she noticed something all the experts missed, and when she tried to report it, she was ridiculed, threatened, fired. And still she persisted. She risked everything, her job, her reputation, the stability her sick daughter needed, because she believed my life was worth fighting for." His voice cracked. "I was conscious when the hospital scheduled to turn me off. I knew the date, the time. And then Anna sang. And for the first time in weeks I was able to respond. Just a finger moving, so tiny she almost missed it. But she didn't miss it. She saw, and she fought for me when everyone else had given up." He turned to Anna, tears shining in his eyes. "You saved me, not just my life but my sanity. Because the worst of being locked in is not the paralysis, it's the isolation. It is knowing you exist, but no one can see you. And you saw me. When I was invisible to everyone else, you refused to stop looking until you found me." Anna was weeping openly, years of tension finally breaking down. Marcus composed himself and turned back to the judge. "Your Honor, this hospital is suing Anna Thompson for saving my life. If this court punishes Anna for doing the right thing, you send a message to every healthcare professional. Keep your head down, don't question superiors. Don't challenge consensus even when your gut tells you something is wrong. But if you exonerate her, perhaps you will save lives we don't even know are in danger yet." Judge Chen banged her gavel after the final arguments. "Rarely does a case come before me where the facts are simultaneously so clear and so profoundly disturbing. Anna Thompson violated protocols. She challenged expert consensus. And by doing so she saved the life of a man who would otherwise have been wrongfully killed." She looked at the hospital's attorneys. "Medicine is practiced by humans, and humans err. When systems fail, we need people like Miss Thompson, willing to question, to challenge, to risk ridicule, to stand up for what they believe is right." She banged her gavel again. "I'm dismissing the hospital's lawsuit with prejudice. I'm granting judgment on her countersuit. The hospital will pay damages, restore her position if she desires, and issue a public apology." Relief hit Anna like a wave. But the judge continued. "More broadly, I order St. Catherine's to conduct a full review of diagnostic protocols for comatose patients, including assessment for locked-in syndrome, and I will recommend statewide guidelines so professionals can report concerns without fear of retaliation." When the court adjourned, Marcus waited near the benches. "Hey," he said when Anna reached him, smiling, a real smile that reached his eyes. "Looks like I owe you some kind of impossible thank you." Anna shook her head. "You don't owe me anything." "You saved my life," Marcus interrupted. He pulled out an envelope. "Your daughter, Clarice, full treatment plan, best specialists, all arranged and paid for." "Marcus, I can't." "You can," he said firmly. "But that's not all." I want to start a center, a place dedicated to diagnosing and treating locked-in syndrome and minimal consciousness, where music and human connection are medical tools as valid as MRIs. I'll fund it, but I need you to help run it. Are you in? Anna thought about everything she had lost and found. Yes, she whispered. Absolutely yes. 6 months later, the Heart's Echo Center opened. Anna served as Director of Integrated Therapies, and Marcus co-ran the foundation. On opening day, Clarice stood beside Anna, now 3 years old and making remarkable progress. "Mommy, are you going to sing for them?" Marcus joined them, walking now without a trace of difficulty. He looked at Anna with gratitude and something deeper, something that had grown through months of working side by side. "Ready for this?" he asked. Anna looked around the center, purpose born of tragedy. "Yes. Let's give every silence a voice." And as the first patients arrived, Anna began to sing, not for crowds, but for imprisoned souls looking for a way home. Because she had learned that the greatest act of love is not singing for those who can applaud, but listening for those who cannot speak, and in that listening, finding the echoes of every heart that refuses to be silenced.